Let's get this week started, John. We are in October, start of one of my favorite months of the year, because it's one of my favorite holidays of the year. That's
Arbor Day?
Arbor Days this month?
I don't know. When is Arbor Day?
I think it's sometime in the spring.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. No, it's the month of Halloween. I love the scary season, so I'm excited about this month.
Arbor Day is Friday, April 24th.
April, okay. I figure sometime in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I figure let's get a little creepy with our categories.
You're just gonna talk to people.
And the first segment of this week, John, is something called Paranormal Happenings.
Ooh.
So, do you know what with this category we're going to talk about?
Is it about monkeys?
It's about close, John. It's about paranormal stories throughout our history as a human species.
I was pretty close with the
Close with the monkeys.
Yeah.
You got the monkey. Monkeys are a close, descendants of human beings, if you believe in evolution. And we're talking about human beings, right? So that was pretty close.
Sir, we don't want to divide the audience
between monkeys and non-monkeys.
We're talking about our what's the word? What's the word? I can't say that word.
There's certain words you can't
evangelical
say, right?
I know that. What do you call the evangelicus?
Evangelicist? No.
Evangelist.
Yeah. There you go. Word of the day, kids, is evangelist. So
I just want a T-shirt.
So when you hear that word, you scream, ah! And so...
All right.
That's the word of the day. What did Pee Wee Herman do? He would do the word of the day, right?
That guy creeped me out. I avoided that show.
You avoided the show. Maybe we'll do a segment on Pee Wee Herman.
We will not
in the upcoming weeks.
I'm not doing any research on the man, nor am I watching any of his content.
So so our first segment's called Paranormal Happenings, and we're gonna talk about a story that's pretty popular in history. John, do you remember the story of the Amityville Horror?
Remember the movie? And
I know
that, I saw the original, but it's been a long time. And did I see the Ryan Reynolds one too? I think I did.
Yes, so you're right. So they made a movie in 1979. It was based on a book from 1977, and it was called The Amityville Horror. It was by American author Jay Anson. And they did do a remake in 2005 with Ryan Reynolds. So the book tells the tale of the experience of the Lutz family in a house on Long Island. But the story is rife, or is that the right word?
I was about to ask you.
It's filled. Maybe I shouldn't try to be so fancy. Filled with controversies and claims of...
You know who's going to hate this?
Who?
Evangelists.
John said the word of the day. So the book started... So it's the story of the Lutz family and their experience moving in 1975. They moved to this house. And after 28 days, they left the house. They claimed that
20 or 28?
28 days. So they lived there for 28 days in December 1975. And they said they left the house because they had been terrorized by paranormal phenomenon while living there. So what the book talks about, it rewinds the time 13 months before, and it focuses on the DeFeo murders. You know what the DeFeo murders were, John?
No.
So there is a man named Ronald Joseph Butch DeFeo Jr., and he was an American mass murderer who was tried and convicted for the 1974 killings of his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. And guess where he killed his family?
Disneyland.
No, close. The same
Disney World.
No, the same house the Lutzes occupied a little bit over a year later.
Do you know there's a Disneyland in Paris?
There is. It's called. You want to tell us what it's called?
No, I don't know what it is.
It's called Disneyland Paris.
That's pretty original.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So let me tell you a little tale, John. So around 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 13th, 1974, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo entered Henry's bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, and he declared, "John, you gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot."
Okay.
So good old Ronald and a small group of people at the bar, probably all drunk, but maybe there's some designated drivers in the group. They went to...
I'm sure most of them Ubered back then.
Right. Took some taxis or however they did in Long Island back then.
Back then, it was probably Lyft to Uber.
Yeah. You think so back then?
Maybe.
So they went to the address. It was 112 Ocean Avenue. It was located near the bar. So maybe he walked there. Maybe he just walked there, John. Maybe they're being responsible. They had they imbibed in a few drinks and they didn't want to drink and drive and make,
Call a wagon.
They called the wagon. And when they got to the house, they found that Ronald's parents were dead inside.
What year was this again?
1974.
Okay. So wagons were actually not as common as I'm thinking.
They weren't in vogue anymore?
No. Okay. Actually, go ahead.
So one of the people in the group that came from the bar, he was actually a friend of Ronald's. His name was Joe Yeswit. And he made a call to the Suffolk County Police. And the police searched the house, and then they found 6 members of the same family were dead in their beds. So the victims, in total, just to recap, were the parents, Ronald DeFeo Jr. and Louise DeFeo. And his 4 siblings, Don, who was 18, Allison, who was 13, Mark, who was 12, and then John Matthew, who was 9. All the victims have been shot with a .35 caliber lever action Marlin 336C rifle. I don't know much about guns.
This guy's parents and then his brothers and sisters.
His parents and his 4 siblings. Yes, 2 sisters and 2 brothers.
All right.
He was the oldest.
Okay.
They all been killed with a rifle around 3:00 in the morning of that day. The parents have both been shot twice, while the children have been killed with single shots. Physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo, the mother, and her daughter Allison were both awake at the time of their deaths. According to Suffolk County Police, the victims were all found lying face down in their beds. The DeFeo family had occupied 112 Ocean Avenue since purchasing it in 1965. They had been there about 9 years.
I had nothing to do with any of this.
And nobody's saying you did, John.
Okay.
You have a rock solid alibi.
Mm-hmm.
The 6 victims were later buried in nearby St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. So Ronald, he was known as Butch. He was the oldest son of the family. He was taken to the local police station for his own protection after suggesting to police officers at the scene of the crime that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman. Luis Fellini.
So he actually had a name?
Yeah, she had a name. He said there is a mob hitman. So, however, an interview at the station soon exposed serious inconsistencies in his version of events. The following day, he confessed to carrying out the killings himself, and Fellini, the alleged hitman, had an alibi, just like you, John, proving he was out of state at the time of the killings.
I was with Fellini.
He was, yeah. So, yeah, rock solid, John. DeFeo told detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast."
Why you look at me like you want a response? I'm like, all right.
He admitted that he had taken a bath and redressed, and detailed where he had discarded crucial evidence such as blood-stained clothes and the Marlin rifle and cartridges before going to work as usual.
What do you do?
What do you mean?
Do you know what he did for like work?
Oh, no.
Okay. Just curious.
Killer.
I don't know what he did. He's a professional killer.
So his trial began on October 14th, 1975. So he and his defense lawyer, William Weber, mounted an affirmative defense of insanity, with DeFeo claiming that he killed his family in self-defense because he heard their voices plotting against him. Have you ever thought your family was plotting against you, John?
Always.
Always. But you kept a calm head and you worked out those suspicions, right?
For most of them.
Mm-hmm.
The rest went away.
The insanity plea was supported by the psychiatrist for the defense, Daniel Schwartz. The psychiatrist for the persecution, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that although DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD, he had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of the crime. On November 21st, 1975, a little bit over a month after his trial began, he was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. And on December 4th, 1975, Judge Thomas Stark sentenced DeFeo to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life. DeFeo is currently held at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in the town of Fallsburg, New York, and all of his appeals and requests to the parole board to date have been denied.
So he's alive?
He's alive.
In New York?
New York.
You know, we've talked about like the DNA stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so quick fact, if this is accurate, because I always ask, like, do they have DNA? When did they use it? It was first used in court. It was discovered like before that, but it was first used in court in '86 in the UK and then '87 in the USA.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always ask, like, did they have DNA back then? Because it's kind of like it's like there's puddles of blood. And it's like it's like that John Mulaney joke where it's like, ew, gross. it's like what do we do with all the killer's blood So I was curious about that right now when you're trying to convict somebody without DNA.
Well, you know what, DNA wasn't until what's crazy if you think back to the OJ trial when they tried to introduce the DNA stuff. It was still, people weren't really, like, especially older people, like, that wasn't convincing to them. Like, they were still looking at it as this, unreliable, type of evidence.
Right.
So, it really hasn't been until the last 20 years with the whole I think CSI has really popularized the idea of
murder
of DNA as reliable source of evidence, right?
Yeah, but if the glove doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm. You must acquit.
Yeah. Have there been like stories of people that are like they just watch the show so much they think they get away with stuff?
Yeah. Scary, right?
Yeah.
Was it like you just need bleach?
I think it's more than that, but
that's all you need, John. Is bleach. It's crazy how much bleach will clean up blood, though.
I mean, from experience, you know this.
Or just do what Dexter used to do.
Plastic
just
everywhere.
Plastic everywhere.
Yeah. You remember watching that Dr. Phil episode that I told you I'd seen?
Nah, remind me.
Okay, there was that Dr. Phil one where it was their daughter's boyfriend or husband or something that the family hated.
Uh-huh.
And he went into the garage with the father-in-law or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
And the guy, they hated the guy. And the whole garage was already wrapped in plastic. He's like, oh, what do you work? He's just like working on some stuff. But I think he shot him in the head. And the guy survived and was able to like overtake the father. like I don't know how it happened. He was able to get away. I don't know if he I think I think he just got away.
Right.
And they had dug a giant hole in the backyard to put him and his car in the backyard.
Why do people always bury the stuff in their backyard?
I don't know.
I guess it's convenience, but like, one would think you want to get something like a little further away than your own backyard.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess if you're like gonna live there forever, you're like, well, strangers aren't gonna come around digging my backyard.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it could be a Goodfellas thing, right? Remember Goodfellas where they had to move the body because they were developing there.
Right.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, there's an up and down side. You don't gotta walk too far.
Yeah, that's there. Your neighbors gonna be like, "Hey, what's going on over here?"
No, but it was big enough for his car to
That's
put.
crazy.
They were gonna put the body in the car and then bury the car.
That's crazy.
Yeah, just like drive the car into the hole.
So what I would do, John,
push
is
the car
I would buy land through a shell company. Never developed there. It's just like
yeah.
bury the bodies there. Oh, now I revealed my master plan on my
Let's do it under Dodger Stadium.
under Dodger Stadium.
Was Jimmy Hoffa? Was it Dodgers?
I thought it was
Or was it the?
no, because that'd be somewhere in New York.
Yeah, it was
Dodger Stadium doesn't
the
exist
Mets, right?
I can't remember. It's Yankee Stadium.
It wasn't Yankee.
It wasn't Yankee Stadium.
No.
Madison Square Garden.
It was the original
It was
Giants.
It was under the Statue of Liberty.
Wasn't it like MetLife?
Under the Statue of Liberty.
I don't know. Anyway, go for it. Tell me more about this great.
Okay.
Tell me more about this great guy.
Okay, so there are some controversies. So, all 6 of the victims were found face down in their beds with no signs of struggle. The police investigation concluded that the rifle had not been fitted with a sound suppressor and found no evidence of sedatives having been administered as initially thought, leading to a speculation that someone in the house should have been awakened by the noise of the gunshots. Police officers and the medical examiner who attended the scene were initially puzzled by the speed and scale of the killings and considered the possibility that more than one person had been responsible for the crime. Neighbors did not report hearing any gunshots being fired, and those who were awake at the time of the murder simply heard the family's sheepdog, Shaggy, barking. DeFeo had a volatile relationship with his father, but the motive for the killings remains unclear. He asked police what he had to do in order to collect on his father's life insurance, which prompted the prosecution to suggest at a trial that his motive was to collect on the life insurance policies of his parents.
You should probably wait like
at least like a week, right?
yeah.
A little longer since his conviction.
Have you seen their bodies or the life insurance policy?
So ever since he was convicted, DeFeo has given several varying accounts of how the killings were carried out. In a 1986 interview for Newsday, DeFeo... Remember Newsday? The magazine?
Yeah.
Did they still print?
I don't know. They might have an online.
Online presence?
I think so.
Well, I haven't seen an article by Newsday for a long time. Maybe I should don't look for it.
There's newsday.com. It's still a thing.
Okay. So in an 86 interview with at the time thriving magazine Newsday, DeFeo claimed his sister Dawn killed their father, and then their distraught mother killed all his siblings before he killed his mother. He stated that he took the blame because he was afraid to say anything negative about his mother to her father, Michael Briganti Sr., and his father's uncle, out of fear that they would kill him. His father's uncle was Pete DeFeo, a capo regime in the Genovese crime family. So this family was connected, John. In this interview, DeFeo also asserted he was married at the time of the murders to a woman named Geraldine, with whom he was living in New Jersey at the time, and that his mother phoned to ask him to return to Amityville to break up a fight between Dawn and their father. That he drove to Amityville with Geraldine's brother, Richard Romando, and that Romando was with him at the time of the murders and could verify his story completely. In 1990, Ronald DeFeo Jr. filed a 440 motion, a proceeding to have his conviction vacated. In support of his motion, DeFeo asserted that Dawn and an unknown assailant who fled the house before he could get a good look at him killed their parents, and Dawn subsequently killed their siblings. He said the only person he killed was Dawn, and that was by accident as he struggled over the rifle. Again, he asserted that he was married to Geraldine and that her brother was with him at the time of the murders. An affidavit from Richard Romandone was submitted to the court, and it was asserted that he could not be located to testify in person. Evidence was submitted to the court by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office suggesting that Ronald Romando did not exist and that Geraldine Gates was living in upstate New York, married to someone else at the time of the murders. So she had an alibi just like you, John.
Right.
Geraldine Gates did not testify at this hearing because the authorities had already confronted her about the false claims, and in 1992 secured a statement under oath where she admitted Romandone was fictitious and that she didn't actually marry DeFeo until 1989 in anticipation of the filing of the 440 motion. Judge Stark denied the motion, writing, "I find the testimony of the defendant overall to be false and fabricated. His testimony that during the fall of 1974 he was married and lived with his wife and child in Long Branch, New Jersey, is incredible and not worthy of belief." So the fellow has been going through this for a while. So this is the emphasis of what led to the start of the Amityville Horror. This guy, varying accounts, his whole family got killed, right? Whether it was him or Geraldine's brother.
This guy's in prison right now.
This guy's in prison. So like the murders happened.
2019, this guy's in prison right now.
Yeah. The murders happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house gets vacated, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully after a nice scrubbing of the of the floors. And it gets put back on the market. And
Doesn't anyone have a mop?
All right. And
we need a mop.
And it stays vacated for over a year. Until a family moves in, and that was the Lutz family.
Okay.
So there's a book that I mentioned earlier, Jay Anson's novel, The Amityville Horror, and this essentially goes over the Lutz family's residents in this house. They're 28-day residents.
Okay.
And then, obviously, 2 years later, the movie gets made, and it enters into...
That's pretty quick.
What?
To make it 2 years later.
The movie?
Yeah.
They were doing a lot. You saw that with The Exorcist, too. Exorcist came out, I think, early 70s, and then
based
2
on
years
a
later.
boy, right? The Exorcist?
Yeah, based on a boy. And they're both supposedly based on true stories. So now this is where it gets interesting, right? So we get this book that gets written about the Lutz family. So the book, purportedly based on a true story, describes the house at 112 Ocean Avenue as remaining empty for 13 months after the DeFeo murders. In December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for what was considered to be a bargain price of $80,000, John.
When were the first murders?
The first murders were in 1974.
And then these are the second residents?
Within a year or so, yeah. It's not the second. I don't think it's the second residence ever in the house. It was just this is the second family.
So there was the 28-day people.
Yeah. So the film family, they lived there for 9 years until Ronald ended their residency in that house.
Yeah, I heard.
13 months later, the Lutz family moved in.
It's not the. It's a rough way to get.
It was a rough eviction, right? Yeah. So in December 1975, they moved in, right? They bought it for a bargain price of $80,000 in Long Island, John. At the time, you're not gonna be able to get a house at that price.
No,
unless it's a murder house. So it was a 5-bedroom. The 5-bedroom house was built in Dutch colonial style. Do you know what Dutch colonial style is?
No idea.
I was hoping you did because I don't know either. It had a distinct gambrel roof. Do you know what a gambrel roof is?
No. Is it Gambriel?
Gambrel. Gambrel. Gambrel.
Nah.
I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. So essentially it's a symmetrical 2-sided roof. It's 2 slopes on each side. I don't know if that makes sense. So you have one peak like this, and then another, and then they have other peaks like this going.
This makes for great podcasting because Matt's using his hands.
I'll put a picture up.
Using his hands to show me.
I'll put a picture up.
What the roof looks like.
I'll put a picture up.
Let me describe Matt's hands. Do it again. I'm just kidding. Oh, look at that thing on the wall.
So what it does, it helps by giving more space in the upper. So if you have a 2-story house, you're gonna have more space in the upper area of the house. Your ceilings are gonna be vaulted. So
okay,
just a little detail if you wanted to know.
It's not like an attic. It's just more of a
more room. It also had a swimming pool and a boathouse, as it was located on a canal.
That's
you know anybody who lived in a canal?
He's showing me what a canal is with his hands.
Yeah,
right now.
it's a body of water. Yeah. So you ever know anybody who lived off of a canal, Joe?
I've forget what a canal is. I mean, I've known people that live near water.
Yeah, it's just a piece of water that comes into an island. I mean, an island, like a piece of land.
I've got like family.
It's not much. It's not like a river. It's just a
Got
water. It just
family
ends.
like in Galveston that lives like by the water and stuff. I don't know what a canal actually.
So this house was located.
I know people that can go fishing in their backyard.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
My brother used to be able to do that. He lived in Florida for a while. In his
Yeah.
apartment, he was able to like off his balcony
Yeah.
just fish. So if you like fishing, I guess that's cool. If you don't, it's really annoying. Seeing
Yeah.
all these people fish.
I hate fishing. I never go outside.
So George and Kathy Lutz, they were married in July 1975 and each had their own homes. But they wanted to start fresh with new property. So Kathy had 3 children from a previous marriage. Daniel, age 9. Christopher,
I
age 7.
wonder where they went.
And Melissa. What do you mean?
What's the new property?
Oh, wait, I'm getting to that. And Melissa, Missy, age 5. They also own a crossbreed Malamute Labrador dog named Harry. So, during their first inspection of the house, the real estate broker told them about the DeFell murders and asked if this would affect their decision. After discussing the matter, they decided it was not a problem. So what would you do if you're house shopping, John? You found a beautiful house. You're like in love with it. The kids love it. Like say you're married in this scenario and you have 3 kids and they all love it and the dog loves it and your wife loves it.
Well, I mean, if the dog loves it, I think that's the most important factor.
But then you find out that there's a few grisly murders happened in every bedroom in the house.
Well, you gotta ask yourself.
In all 5 bedrooms.
You gotta ask yourself one question though.
Mm.
How much does the dog love it?
So they were fine. Apparently the Lutz didn't care. The dog loved it. They did not care. So they moved in December 19, 1975.
You like the house, boy?
So, John, much of the DeFell family's furniture was still in the house.
I mean, now it's furnished.
Because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. A friend of George Lutz learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed. Would you have the house blessed if you bought this murder house?
I think it all comes down to what the dog wants.
So the dog wanted a blessing.
The dog wants it blessed, we bless it.
Okay, good. So at the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process.
I just like when you add non-practicing.
Well, they're both non-practicing. So.
Yeah.
So
when people say they practice medicine, like, I'm still trying to figure it out. You want me to do your back surgery?
So luckily, George knew a Catholic priest named Father Ray who agreed to carry out the housing blessing. In Anthony's book, real-life priest Father Ralph J. Peccaro is referred to as Father Mancuso for privacy reasons. But obviously, it's not private anymore. To reveal his name.
I said the dog talked.
Right, the dog talked. He's the one he pointed it out with his little paw.
Mm-hmm.
Father Mancuso was a lawyer, judge of the Catholic court, and psychotherapist who lived at the local Sacred Heart Rectory. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the building to carry out the rites. R-I-T-E-S, not R-I-G-H-T-S. The rites.
Okay.
When he flicked the first holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out.
The dog talks?
When leaving the house, Father Mancuso did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy. You would think that's a little detail that you would mention, right? If you heard a voice say, get out. just even if it's just like, as he's leaving, it's like, well, thank you for having me over. I did the rites. I did all the rooms. Oh, by the way, a voice said, get out. It's like.
Forgot to mention, the devil lives here.
So he didn't mention this to George and Kathy. So on December 24th.
He didn't want to upset the dog.
So on December.
I'm going to exhaust this dog thing for the rest.
Oh, I know you are. I should never brought up the dog. So on December 24th, 1975, Father Mancuso called George Lutz and advised him to stay out of the second floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice.
Wait, who called who?
The father called George. The priest. I mean, I should say the priest.
The priest called the homeowner.
The father. Yeah,
the guy that owned the dog.
The guy who owned the dog. He advised him to stay out of the second floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice, the former bedroom of Mark and John Matthew DeFeo.
He's saying stay in there?
Stay out of there.
Oh, he tells him, okay.
That Kathy planned to use as a sewing room, but the call was cut short by static. And, back in the 1970s, once the call is cut, it's like, there's no texting. There's no... Maybe he could have Facebooked them. They just say, hey, I'm liking your post. Hey, man, stay out of the second floor.
Man, I don't think that technology was available back then.
Following his visit to the house, Father Mancuso allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata. You know what stigmata is?
Just because of the movie. It's like isn't it like devil disease?
No. So stigmata...
Isn't it like catching evil?
No, stigmata... So in Christianity, John... Stigmata, they're the appearance of bodily wounds, scars, and pain in locations corresponding to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus Christ. So on your hands, feet, I think he was like pierced in his ribs by an asshole Roman.
You are gonna upset our Roman audience.
the wrist, it's just areas where he was like, wounded. So that's stigmata. So at first,
George didn't know that. I thought it was just like a demon, like demon wounds in general. I didn't know it was like a...
So you never know anybody who developed stigmata?
I mean, I think I got it once.
You got it once?
But they gave me...
It's the antibiotics.
Yeah, I was out for
about...
But
I thought you weren't supposed to take antibiotics if you got stigmata. You should just to let it run its course. Your body would...
No, that's staph infection.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so at first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house.
Don't take medical advice from us.
No, please don't. Talking about their experiences subsequently, they reported that it was as if they were each living in a different house. Some of the experience of the Lutz family at the house are described in the book as follows. Okay, so this is some of the creepy occurrences. George would wake up around 3:15 every morning and would go out to check the boathouse. Later, he would learn that this was the estimated time...
My stigmata's acting...
that this was the estimated time of the DeFeo killings. Okay? The house was plagued by swarms of flies despite the winter weather. Kathy had vivid nightmares about the murders and discovered the order in which they occurred and the rooms where they took place. The Lutz children also began sleeping on their stomachs in the same way that the dead bodies and the DeFeo murders have been found. Can you sleep on your stomach? I can't. I would find that very uncomfortable.
No, I mean, I think I've done it tossing and turning, but not intentionally.
The only person I know personally who sleeps on their stomach is my brother. I don't know if he still does, but I remember he was sleeping on his stomach. I don't know how he would do it.
My dad does it.
Oh, really? It's uncomfortable. Like my neck hurts.
Yeah, my dad does it and turns his head, I think. It seems uncomfortable.
It seems really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I sleep on my side.
Yeah, I should have to sleep on my back because I got a shitty back.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm suffocating if I sleep on my back.
I'm just used to it.
Yeah, I feel like, the times when I do sleep on my back, that's why I get those paralysis dreams.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah.
You already know I have sleep paralysis.
Yeah, it's creepy.
I've had it since I was a child.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about sleep paralysis in one of the episodes.
Not today.
Not today. Okay, so Kathy would feel a sensation as if being embraced in a loving manner by unseen force. George discovered a small hidden room around 4 feet by 5 feet behind shelving in the basement.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, the walls were painted red, and the room did not appear in the blueprints of the house. The room came to be known as the Red Room. This room had a profound effect on their dog, Harry, who refused to go near it and cowered.
The dog is back, baby.
And cowered as it sensing something ominous.
I knew the dog was coming back.
Dog always has.
So he's got a name now?
Yeah, he had it since the
Okay,
beginning.
Harry.
Yeah, he's had it since the beginning.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, you probably overlooked when
I
said
ate
Harry.
too much before this podcast.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
talked about it.
Yeah,
I'm a little sluggish.
Yeah. So there were cold spots and odors of perfume and excrement in areas of the house where no wind drafts or piping would explain the source. While tending to the fire, George and Kathy saw the image of a demon with half his head blown out. It was burned into the soot, the back of the fireplace. So, I wonder if there's something up with this house, like, after a couple of these occurrences.
Or there's just a bunch of liars.
So we'll get to that soon.
I'll play this game.
The Lettuce's 5-year-old daughter, Missy, developed an imaginary friend named Jody, a dynamic pig-like creature with glowing red eyes.
Ew.
So that's a weird friend.
Yeah.
In the early morning
I
hours...
knew a guy that looked like that.
Well, you're friends with him. Were you friends with him, or you just knew? He was an acquaintance?
We don't talk anymore. He owes me a lot of money.
Okay. In the early morning hours of Christmas Day 1975, George looked up at the house after checking on the boathouse and saw Jody, this mysterious demon imaginary friend, standing behind Missy at her bedroom window. When he ran up to her room, he found her fast asleep with her small rocking chair slowly rocking back and forth. George would wake up to the sound of the front door slamming. He would race downstairs to find the dog sleeping soundly at the front door. Nobody else heard the sound, although it was loud enough to wake the house. George would hear what was described as a marching band tuning up, or what sounded like a clock radio playing not quite on frequency. When he went downstairs, the noise would cease. George realized that he bore a strong resemblance to Ronald DeFeo Jr. and began drinking at the Witch's Brew, the bar where DeFeo was once a regular customer.
What are the odds that that's the name of the bar? Like, seriously.
I don't know.
It's like...
I guess you can look it up. Yeah.
It's just funny that, like, let's get away from these demons. Let's go
It's
down to the
Witch-
regular-ass bar
Witch's Brew.
called the Witch's Brew.
When closing Missy's window, which Missy said Jody climbed out of, Kathy saw red eyes glowing at her. While in bed, Kathy received red welts on her chest caused by unseen force and was levitated 2 feet in the air. Locks, doors, and windows in the house were damaged by unseen force. Cloven hoof prints attributed to an enormous pig appeared in the snow outside the house on January 1st, 1976.
Funny, all this was just Harry.
So it's just Harry playing pranks.
Tearing shit up, making friends. She's allergic to the dog.
Green gelatin-like slime oozed from walls in the hall and also from the keyhole of the playroom door in the attic. A 12-inch crucifix hung in the living room by Kathy revolved until it was upside down and gave off a sour smell. George tripped over...
Dude, I hate smelly crucifixes so much.
That is your pet peeve. George tripped over a 4-foot-high China lion ornament in the living room and found bite marks on one of his ankles. Later, this lion would reappear.
Wasn't Harry?
It wasn't Harry. Later, this lion would reappear in the living room after George had moved it back upstairs to the sewing room. George saw Kathy transform into an old woman of 90.
Sure, this wasn't like a house that's just really bad mold and
the hair wild and shocking white, the face a mass of wrinkles and ugly lines, saliva dripping from the toothless mouth, was George's description. Missy?
Wait, who saw what?
George saw his wife turn into a woman of 90.
Okay.
Missy would sing constantly while in her room. Whenever she left the room, she would stop singing, and upon returning, she would resume singing where she left off. And then on one occasion, Kathy heard what sounded like a window being opened and closed through the sewing room door, even though she was sure no one was in there. So, after all this...
Harry.
So, after all this stuff, deciding that something was wrong with their house they cannot explain rationally, George and Kathy carried out a blessing of their own on January 8th, 1976. George held a silver crucifix while they both recited the Lord's Prayer.
Was it smelly?
It was an unsmelly crucifix.
Okay.
So, silver doesn't tend to like hold stink for that long. While in the living room, George allegedly heard a chorus of voices asking him, "Will you stop?" By mid-January 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would turn out to be their final night in the house. The Lutzes declined to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as quote-unquote too frightening. After
We'll be down at the witch's brew.
After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutz decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until
they had like a monopoly on this thing.
Until they had sorted out the problems with the house. They claimed that the phenomena followed them there, with the final scene of Anson's book describing greenish black slime coming up the staircase towards them. On January 14th, 1976, George and Kathy, with their three children and their dog Harry, left and went to Ocean Avenue, leaving all their possessions behind. The next day, a mover arrived to remove the possessions to send to the Lutzes. He reported no paranormal phenomenon while inside the house. So the book was written after Tam Mossman, an editor of the publishing house Prentice Hall, introduced George and Kathy to Jay Anson, the author of this book. The Lutzes did not work directly with Anson, but submitted around 45 hours of tape-recorded recollections to him, which were used as the basis of the book. Estimates of the sales of the book are around 10 million copies from its numerous editions. Anson's is said to have based the title of the Amityville Horror on the Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft, which was published in 1929.
Okay, so who wrote the book?
His name was Jay Anson.
So it's just a guy that said, "Hey, family, what happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And he just documented everything and wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. So there was criticism and controversy to this book. So one edition of the book has a quote from a review in the Los Angeles Times on the front cover stating, "A fascinating, frightening book, the scariest true story I have read in years." While the tagline states, "More hideously frightening than The Exorcist because it actually happened." The role of Father Pecoraro, I can never pronounce his name, in the story.
Same guy?
Same Father Mancuso. Has been given considered attention. During the course of the lawsuit surrounding the case in the late 1970s, the father stated in an affidavit that his only contact with the Lutzes concerning the matter had been by telephone. Other accounts say that the father did visit the house but experienced nothing unusual there. The father gave what may have been his only on-camera interview about his recollections during a 1980 episode of In Search Of, a documentary series hosted by Leonard Nimoy. The father's face was obscured during the interview to preserve his anonymity. In the interview, he repeated the claim that he heard a voice saying, "Get out," but stopped short of giving it a paranormal origin. He also stated that he felt a slap on his face during the visit and that he did subsequently experience blistering on his hands. The claims of physical damage to the locks, doors, and windows were rejected by Jim and Barbara Cromartie, who bought the house for $55,000, even a better deal, John, in March 1977. Damn, they made out better than the Lutzes.
It's a steal.
Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a television interview filmed at the house for That's Incredible, Barbara Cromartie argued that they appeared to be the original items and had not been repaired.
What do you think that meeting was like? What do we call the show?
That's incredible. The That's Incredible feature also showed that the Red Room was a small closet in the basement and would have been known to the previous owners of the house because it was not concealed in any way. The claim made in Chapter 11 of the book that the house was built on a site where the local Shinnecock Indians had once abandoned the mentally ill, and the dying was rejected by the local Native American leaders.
So it's basically like that movie. What is it? Poltergeist?
Mm-hmm.
Built over ancient
Indian burial ground. The claim of Cloven, it was popular back then, right? Like saying like Indian burial grounds.
It was the guy from Coach, right? What was his name?
Craig T. Nelson.
I just remember like you move the stones but not the bodies, right? Or something like that. Yeah.
The claims of physical damage to the claim of cloven hoof prints in the snow on January 1st, 1976 was rejected by other researchers because weather records showed that there had been no snow in Amityville on that date. Neighbors reported nothing unusual during the time that the Lutzes were living there. Police officers are depicted visiting the house in the book and 1979 film, but records show that the Lutzes did not call the police during the period that they were living on Onsha Avenue. There was no bar in Amityville called the Witch's Brew. John, at the time.
Wow.
Ronald DeFeo Jr. was a regular customer at Henry's Bar, a short distance from 112 Ocean Avenue.
Okay.
But not the Witch's Brew, John. You're right.
So is this...
You're right with your suspicions of this fictitious bar, John. Fictitious bar. I feel lied to.
Yeah. It starts to question some credibility here, but go ahead. I'm interested.
So, critics, including Stephen Kaplan, have pointed out that changes were made to the book as it was reprinted in different editions. In the original hardcover edition, the father's car is an old tan Ford, and he experiences an incident in which the hood flies up against the windshield while he is driving it. In later editions, the car is described as a Chevrolet Vega before reverting to a Ford.
Well, that happened to my friend, but it was just a shitty car.
Yeah. So
we didn't think ghosts was the logical explanation for that, though.
they were just lying bastards.
It shattered.
Whole
It
family?
also no. I'm saying it happened to my friend.
Oh, I thought you meant just
no. It really happened to my friend. It shattered his window. It's actually quite terrifying on the highway.
So apparently, all the owners all the owners of the house since the Lutz family left, none of them have reported problems since the original Lutz family left. James Cromartie, the ones who bought the house right after the Lutzes, lived there with his wife Barbara for 10 years, commenting, "Nothing weird ever happened, except for people coming by because of the book and the movie."
So who lives there right now? Is it anybody? Or is it just owned by like
just somebody? But not everybody who's lived
That's
there.
Matt's way of saying he didn't research the question I asked.
No, I mean, I didn't think you were gonna ask it, John.
I'm just kidding. I don't care, but I am curious.
Uh huh.
In fact, are you Googling?
Nah.
Okay, go for it. What do you got?
Okay, so this is the legacy, John. So Kathleen, the wife, she died in 2004. She died of emphysema. And the father, George, he died in 2006. He died of heart disease. The couple had divorced.
These are the ones that are in the movie, right?
Yeah, the Lutzes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The couple had divorced in the late 1980s, but remained on good terms. So during that time period that the Lutz family lived at the house, Dr. Stephen Kaplan, a self-styled vampirologist and ghost hunter, was called in to investigate the house. Kaplan and the Lutzes had a falling out after Kaplan said that he would expose any fraud that was found. Kaplan went on to write a critical book titled The Amityville Horror Conspiracy with his wife Roxanne Sauch Kaplan. The book was published in 1995. So, John, have you ever heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren?
Yeah, I actually kind of. I know that they're the ones, the Annabelle people from all the Annabelle movies.
So supposedly on the night of March 6, 1976, the house was investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren. They are a husband and wife team, self-described as demonologists. They investigated together with the crew from the television station Channel 5.
I actually
New York.
started to go to school for that.
Demonologist?
Yeah, but I did not. I didn't finish. I needed about a semester, maybe. I lost interest.
So they investigated, and when they had an image, allegedly, one of the images that they took showed as they did their investigation, they showed a demonic boy with glowing eyes who was standing at the foot of a staircase.
When you say showed, you mean they have like pictures?
They have pictures. The photograph did not emerge into the public domain until 1975, when George and Kathy Lutz and Rod Steiger appeared on the Merv Griffin Show to promote the release of the first film. 112 Ocean Avenue was also investigated by the parapsychologist Hans Holzer. The Warrens and Holzer have suggested that the house is occupied by malevolent spirits due to its history. The Warrens' visit to the house was depicted in the 2016 film The Conjuring 2.
So, wait, in The Conjuring 2, the house...
I think it was in the beginning. I can't remember part 2.
Okay, but it's not the
Might
house.
be- it might be at the end.
It's not the same house that they keep their doll in.
No.
It's just a house that they show in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all blur together, all those...
So
Annabelle
the house still exists, John, to this day,
movies.
but has been renovated, and the address changed in order to discourage sightseers from visiting it. They changed it to 113 Ocean Avenue.
Is that really?
No, I'm joking.
So it's undisclosed.
It's undisclosed. So the famous quarter round
I
windows.
bet you could talk to some real estate people in the
You can
town.
find it. Yeah.
So
So the famous quarter round windows have been removed, and the house today looks considerably different from its depiction in the films. The house in Tom's River used as the location for the first three films has also been modified for the same reason. So they had to film it.
It's funny. I was making fun of you earlier, but now
Uh-huh.
I'm picturing it. You're talking about the big, tiny, pointy roof.
Yeah.
Kind of like a castle-ish, like a tower kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you go on, but I was gonna say, if this is accurate, and maybe you were gonna get to this anyway, and you already know who owns it.
The last note I have is May 2010. The house was placed on the market with an asking price of $1.15 million. A lot different from $55,000.
This is what I see.
Wait. In August 2010, the house was sold to a local resident for $950,000.
Okay.
And
Fine. Ruin my point.
on August 21st, 2010, the party owner held a moving sale at the house, and hundreds of people turned out for the event. So, what was your point? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Keep going.
No, that's it. That's all I have.
I'm seeing that in 2017,
Mhm.
it was sold to an undisclosed owner for $605,000.
So it keeps going up and down
Yeah.
in price.
And that's the last thing I see is 2017, which should probably be the last one, right?
Probably is the last one
Yeah.
until they resell it for $20 million.
And what's the what's the city or town? I know it's in New York, but
It's in Amityville, Long Island.
Yeah, it can't be. I mean, everybody who lives there has to know that where the house is.
Oh yeah. They probably.
Hey,
have to.
Bill, you can just be like, hey, it's that one. It's only against.
Yeah.
Everybody's
It's
like,
not even
it's
a mystery.
miss. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the story of the Amityville Horror, John.